Welcome, all you Contras, preppers, and everybody out there who doesn't like communism. I'm going to start off tonight. We're going to have a little conversation about what classes are coming up. And then I've got a special guest talking about something he normally doesn't talk about. So that should be very interesting. And it is gun related for all you gun addicts like me. All right, let's go down to the training. I'm going to start off with barrel and hatchet, just because they're up on the screen first. And we have Contender Rifle 2. So Rifle 1 on the 8th of August, and then Rifle 2 will be the 29th of August. They also have, on the 11th of September, Contender Pistol 1. This is all in Mulberry, Florida right now. On the 12th, Contender Pistol 2. And then 26th of September will be Contender Rifle 1 again. Jumping on, we're going to go to Tactical Wisdom, because they are out right now having Mountain Readiness out in the mountains, out in the west, in Montana, on Joe Dolio's site. And I think they're having a really good time. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of Malort fly, so that may not be as good a time for some people, but hey. And right now, they're having a 3-day course, July 28th to 30th, Fieldcraft. August 1st is going to be Basics of Pistol Shooting for $100, which is really cheap for a 1-day course on that. August 2nd, Personal Protection in the Home, $150. August 8th, Land Navigation, 1 day. August 9th, Getting Home. I really want to know more about that. I might have to hit him up and ask him more questions. August 21st to the 23rd is going to be Combatives. He does love his Combatives. August 29th is Basics of Pistols for Women. August 30th is Personal Protection in the Home again. And October 16th to 18th will be the Community Security Ops in North Carolina. So remember, they are coming to North Carolina. He is coming out there. I'm going to try to shoot for that. It's looking dimmer by the day, but we will see how that goes. On to Brush Beater. Brush Beater is going to have an advanced RTO operators course out in Montana the 21st and 23rd of September. And then we have a Tactical Combat Casualty Care, 14th and 16th of August in North Carolina. Signals Intelligence course will be 28th to 30th August in North Carolina. And then there is a Signals Intelligence course out, I believe. Let me verify this. So I click on it. They've rechanged your website a little bit. Signals Intelligence course is going to be 25th and 27th September out in Montana as well. So that's the RTO course and the Signals Intelligence course right after that. Realize that when you go to his website, you're going to have to peek around a little bit. They've been doing some updating, and it looks better for sales. It's a little harder for the training courses. There's going to be a Scout course, 9th to the 11th of October in North Carolina. And then immediately after there on the 12th and 14th is the Recce course. It's about $1,000 put together. It's worth it to come up there for that if you don't have the money. Hit the Scout course first. And then if you have the time and not the money, you come up as OPFOR, and then you take the Recce afterwards. There is an RTO course coming up on the 7th through the 9th of August in North Carolina. And there will be the other RTO course will be 18th to the 20th September in Montana. Our guest is going to be having a class on HF NVIS. That'll be 11th to 13th of September in North Carolina. Fighting Carbine is going to be 1st to 2nd of August and 26th. And then 13th to 15th of November will be the Drone ISR course. Intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Not dropping bombs on people, but using your drones to get the information you need. And we are going to move on to our good friend Wes out here, and he's RallyPointSolutions.com. And let's see what his upcoming courses are. As of right now, physical surveillance, identification, and countermeasures in Fayetteville, North Carolina. That'll be 21st, 23rd of August. Surveillance awareness will be 21st of 23rd of August as well. And that'll be in Fayetteville as well. There's a Sovereign Health Summit that I brought up last time. That'll be 27th to 31st of October. And, of course, Mountain Readiness Fallout in North Carolina for this year will be the 2nd to the 4th of November. Mountain Readiness out in Texas, though, will be 12th to the 14th of March 2027. So you guys out in Texas, if there's anyone listening, you got one coming your direction. little less mountainous. I know there's terrain out there, but definitely not what I consider mountain readiness. But that should be interesting, and I'd love to see who's coming out there for that. And that's all I have for the moment. All right, tonight we have historian in, and normally we're talking about comms and long range communications with him and HF and NVIS, but I am sitting here in my little den, and I have a Bear Creek Arsenal, very nice heavy barrel 22 with a threaded end for suppressors, and it's their version of a 1022. And I also have a Kyber Optics 3x9x40 optic on top. And this happened because while we were sitting at the class, we started talking about something that you'd brought up before, and that was shooting 22s at long range. And I'll be straight up honest with you, I love shooting 22. It annoys me sometimes too, because 22 is kind of finicky, and we'll probably get into that because we had a long discussion about that too. But you kind of introduced me to the idea of using it as not only fun, but a training setup for using larger rifles. And just kind of tell me how you got into this and what brought you into the 22 world for this.
So, way back in the day, to a very good shooting club down in Central Virginia, and a lot of people in that club were very serious about competition. And there were a lot of small bore rifle shooters, folks that shot 22s competitively at relatively short distances. And I was getting interested in long distance rifle shooting, kind of transitioning out of pistol shooting competitively and getting more interested in long distance rifle shooting. And one of the old timers suggested that I should practice with my 20 on the 100 and 200 yard line. And at the time, that did not appeal to me, but I never forgot the advice. The guy that gave it to me was a really sharp guy and a, President's 100 shooter. So, I didn't discard the idea. I just, for various reasons, didn't get into it. But as I got more interested in longer distance rifle shooting, I realized that I was spending a great deal of time and money loading ammunition, centerfire ammunition, that I thought was good enough to shoot long distance. And that was a journey in itself. But the other thing was that it can be very difficult to get access to anything over a 100 or 200 yard range. And it occurred to me that it might be a good idea to try polishing some of the essential skills for longer distance shooting using a 22 with the same optic as my longer distance rifles. That makes sense so far?
Yeah, so basically, and this was something I really wanted Wisco Mando on tonight, but he has some time with his family. We're going to do probably a separate podcast on touching on this subject as well, because he has done the same thing under a organization apparently that kind of did 1022 competitions, or not 1022, but 22 LR competition stuff. I did a little small bore a long time ago and got into some air rifles when I was very young, competition style peep sights and all that stuff. So the reality is when you shoot the 22, there is some comparison to higher caliber weapons and how wind affects it. And because you're shooting a smaller round at we're going to call a short range for a rifle, but a long range for a 22. I think that's correct, would be the correct way to position that.
That's right.
And the wind affects it at shorter distances the similar way, we'll say similar, that say a 308 or something 30-06 per se is at say 800 yards or beyond.
To a hollow point, sure, Lapware, take your pick. At 500 yards.
Historian, just start over with you with that again. We had some kind of audio error.
Oh, okay. So the 22 at 100 yards is a lot like a 308 boat tail at 500. And a 22 at 200 yards is similar in drop and windage to a 308 at 1,000 yards. So if you, as I do, have difficulty getting access to shoot and practice at longer distances using centerfire rifles, having the ability to work on your wind reading and, work on your long distance or longer distance holds with something that is a lot easier to find distance for, number one, and a lot less expensive to shoot, number two, you can get a lot more practice in and build your wind reading skills and build your to, dial and dope the drop with the 22. And, those skills, you get about, I don't know, 80 to 90% of the skills that you'll need to fire centerfire rifles by shooting 22s at 100 to 300 yards. And there are 22 competitions. One of the clubs in my general area of operation used to have 22 competitions that went out to 500 yards. And, in the wind, 100 yards is a challenge. 100 yards is a real challenge. Once you go past 300 yards, it gets pretty darn tough. But
I
if
would
you can,
assume so.
yeah, if you can reliably hit a 2 MOA target at 300 yards with a 22, that's a 6-inch target at 300 yards with a 22. You can probably do very well with a good centerfire stick like a 6.5 Creed or 6x47 Lapua or 6.5x47 Lapua, or, even the older 7mm Magnums do well at distances out to, 1,000, 1,200 yards. Once you develop those skills, once you get good dope on your centerfire stick, the 22 gets you most of the way there and helps you keep the rust off once you get those skills. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that you don't have to have an awesome clone and you don't have to have awesome glass in order to do that. But what you do need to have is you need to have a similar optic on the 1020 as you do on your centerfire rifle, because, those skills, you don't want to be thinking when you're trying to, do the dope and dial and dump it, right? So it's a really good idea to grit your teeth and spend the cash on an optic that matches the one that's on your long distance rifle.
Well, I want to add a couple things to this because this is fascinating me for a while, and I know back in the day there was we'll throw out random gun tuber name, I don't know who it is, probably Grand Thumb, but it could be anyone. And he interviewed somebody, and I don't remember if he said 500 feet or 500 yards, but somebody had claimed that they could shoot long range with a 22 and hit a can. And I watched it back in the day because I'm like, can you? Theoretically, it's possible to shoot pretty good distance with anything with enough training, with enough skill, with the right rifle. Magical things can happen. But he ended up not being able to be that successful. But we know from past, a lot of the snipers like Carlos Hathcock and that vintage World War II snipers, a lot of those guys started off with 22s in Tennessee and other places hunting for their own food. And that translation of those skills as a young child to feed themselves, feed the family, translated to them being exceptional shots. And I want to say York was one of the shooters that was a 22 out there too. I could be wrong on that one. I know Hathcock was, but there's enough history buffs on YouTube for you to catch up. That the other thing I wanted to say is right now, and you're right, you don't have to buy the most expensive thing. If you've got a 22 right now, you're good to go. There is on brushbeater.store my Bear Creek 22 LR, 16 inches with a heavy barrel, $339.99. So they're out there, and it's the 201. So just side note on this thing, 416R stainless steel barrel, overmolded Gilly green Hogue stock, which I like the wood of the 1022 family that you can get, but it's a comfortable gun. He's got a T6 aluminum receiver, and they've got the pick rail already built into it. I also got the Kyber Optics 3x9 by 40, and it is $199. Now, if you sit around, you wait, Scout always puts a sale on sooner or later for optics. So if you want to get a little cheaper on some of this stuff, and he's got some even better optics out there for you guys who really want to shoot further, he's got a 3x18 by 50 out there for
You
right
don't
around
need that much
500.
scope.
No, you don't. But if you're gonna go that way and you want to go crazy, you can, but you don't need that. $199. It's $200 for a scope.
Yep.
It's not
And
bad.
no, and it's great value for the money. And I will say I was impressed with your Bear Creek 22.
Oh, the trigger was phenomenal. They upgraded the trigger and a few other things, and I'm not trying to like expound on Bear Creek and they're a great company or anything else like that. I think Scout said it succinctly. He's like, they don't make very good AR-15s, but they really do a good job on the 1022 or the 201, which is their clone of the 1022. And I had been looking for a 1022 for a long time. I just really didn't want to spend $500-$600 on a 22. I
Yeah,
really
well,
didn't.
you can spend a whole lot more than that. I've got another buddy who I think has about $2,000 into his 1022 clone. And that thing will shoot in the twos. I mean, it'll shoot groups at 50 yards.
So
with the ammo that it likes. And that's another thing I wanted to talk a little bit about.
that's what I wanted to bounce into too, because we had a whole conversation after on ammo, and one of the things that drives me nuts about the 22, and I think a lot of shooters of the 22, is you may have malfunctions, you may have issues. A 22 out of one firearm will be spread all over the place, and then another firearm, it shoots dead nuts every time. So
Yep.
how do you address that?
So what I do is, first off, let's talk about ammunition velocity, right? People that shoot 22s shoot high-speed 22s, supersonic ammo. If you have ambitions to shooting longer distance, you are much better off using subsonic target ammo. And there are a dozen or more good offerings out there. Probably the highest end is going to be Ely or something similar. And, Remington and Winchester make some target ammo. Norma actually makes some very good stuff, 22 target ammo that's not outrageously expensive.
Why would you want the subsonic over a hypersonic round that a lot of people just straight go to normally, just out of, I guess, being normally, hey, faster is better?
Right. And that's not true. And the reason that it isn't true is because when the supersonic bullet goes through the transonic zone, that has a tendency to destabilize it. Unless you've gone to a great deal of trouble to optimize the bullet profile so that it is less likely to be disturbed as it goes through the transonic zone. And by the way, Sierra did that with the 175 grain Match King for 308 that the U.S. military uses. They went to a lot of trouble to optimize the bullet profile so that the transition from super did not significantly degrade accuracy. And they spent quite a lot of money and time on developing that. But with the 22, you're better off starting subsonic velocities, and then you don't have to deal with the issue of the bullet going transonic on its way to the target. It is entirely possible. I have a Ruger 1022. I've had it a while. I bought a relatively inexpensive Green Mountain match barrel at a show a number of years ago now. But I think I had $90 into the rifle. I had $125 into the barrel. I put another into an aftermarket stock, and I think I spent probably $40 or $50 for a bipod. Nothing fancy, but it works. And then I dropped about, and this was a number of years ago, so probably closer to $1,000 these days. I dropped about $450 on the same optic that I had on my long distance rifle. So I actually had more money into the optic than I did into the rifle. And
that's common. That is common with long range shooters.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, and then what I did was I went ahead and I got about 6 different kinds of ammunition. I got CCI standard velocity. I got some Remington. I got some Winchester subsonic suppressor, I think it was. I got, what else did I get? I got some Ely. I got, what's the Mexican company? I'm trying to think of the name. Anyway, I got a half a dozen different varieties of subsonic ammo, including some, stuff that at the time was really high dollar. And, some of that Ely stuff will go 30, 40 cents a round. So I got, 6 different kinds of ammo. And what I did was I broke the barrel in, shooting the CCI, and then I went and cleaned it, and then I fired 10 rounds to make sure that the lead was being properly built up again. And there used to be a publication called The Accurate Rifle, and they had a whole series on accurate .22 shooting in that magazine, and I still have that. But the basic idea is you want to let the rifle build up to a point where the lead buildup and the fouling inside the rifle has reached a point of equilibrium. And then you shoot the rifle and see what kinds of groups you get. And I would shoot 5 10-shot groups at 50 yards and look at the group sizes. And I did that for all 6 types of ammo. And in between ammo types, I would clean it, fire 50 rounds of break-in, and then fire 50 rounds for record. And this was a multi-day effort. So at the end of it, I looked at the groups, and the Ely was more consistent. It was the most consistent. It's also about 4 times as expensive as the next best contender, which was the CCI standard velocity. So the CCI that I had, the lot that I had, I would get a little bit of a flyer, like maybe 1 shot in 10 or 2 shots in 10. And if I were shooting competition, and really being serious about trying to put them all in the same hole, I would probably have stuck with the Ely. But for my purposes, which are training for long distance, I've been shooting long enough now that I know when I mess up, right? I know when I've had I know when I've made a bad shot.
Yeah, you can just kind of feel it, and you're like, oh,
Well,
I know that one
you
flew off.
Yeah, you know that when the trigger let go, that your sights were not properly aligned or that there was a problem, right?
Yep.
And so, if I get a flyer every 10, roughly every 10 shots, and I'm practicing and I know I had a good release and elevation is off, and at 300 yards, it can be off a fair amount, an MOA plus or 2 MOA plus, then, and I see the thing hitting in a squirrely direction, I'm like, okay, I know I had that properly, held in. I let another one go, and this time it hits with the same hold and same release and everything else, then I know it was the ammo and not me. The point is that my particular stick shoots very well with the CCI standard velocity. And it does vary from lot to lot. So as I run to the end of a 5,000 round brick case, I'll usually buy another lot. As I get down to like my last 1,000 rounds, I'll buy another lot and take that out and do some group tests with that and see if that lot groups as well as the one that I've got, or maybe better, or sometimes worse. And if it's worse, then, I've got some friends, and, I will offer them that ammunition at my cost.
Yeah.
And buy another lot and try that one.
Yeah. And that was something you brought up, like buying 1,000, 2,000 rounds of something. Once you figure out kind of what your beast will eat,
right? Yeah,
see how the lots react.
I usually buy it by the 5,000 round case.
Yeah.
And, when you buy it that way, it's relatively inexpensive and you have the same lot for 5,000 rounds. And unless you are really practicing seriously, and by that I mean probably, 500 rounds a week, um, even then, a case will last you for 10 weeks of shooting, 500 rounds a week. I don't have that much time these days.
Nobody has that much time right now,
Well, yeah, I mean, back when I
unless
was,
you're a competitive shooter or something like that. Yeah,
well,
or single.
back when I was single and back when I was seriously competing,
Yeah,
shooting
you make
500
time
rounds
for
in
it.
a week. Yeah, well, I'd shoot every day.
Yeah, yep.
I'd get off work and I'd go to the range and I'd practice. And, I would go through 500 to 1,000 rounds of pistol ammo a week. And I would usually practice with 22s, both bullseye and just, rifle practice. So it wasn't unusual for me to go through 500 rounds of 22, maybe in 2 weeks. But, when you shoot every day and you want to get good, you can run through that kind of ammo. But, I think this most recent case I've gotten has probably lasted me so far a couple of years, and I'll probably get another year out of it yet.
Hey, teaching too many radio classes.
Well, there is that. But the thing about it is, I had always pigeonholed it in my head as being something that you use to help newbies learn how to shoot. And
Yeah,
certainly, programs like Appleseed, you know, you only need a 25-yard range to do that. And that's great. It's a great way to, try to inculcate proper habits and all the rest. And, if somebody can hit consistently within a quarter of an inch to 3/8 of an inch at 25 yards, then they're ready to move a little farther out. And, if you can keep them all inside a half inch at 50 yards, then yeah, okay, you're ready to go a little farther out. And out to about, 25 or 30 yards, the wind doesn't have, unless it's blowing half a hurricane, the wind doesn't really have all that much impact on your, doesn't really change your point of impact all that much. And
right.
you can stay focused on the fundamentals, making sure you have a good sight picture and a good trigger release, among a number of things. But, those are all basic skills that you should have before you start going farther out. Once you have the basics down and you're comfortable in being able to, hit a quarter inch target at 25 yards, then you can start, stretching your legs out a little bit. And then you start to get into wind and windage, as well as range estimation, are the two most important skills for long distance shooting. And, as I said at the beginning of this, right, if you develop those skills, develop your ability to hold steadily and get a good release and all of that other basic stuff that you learned at 25 yards, it all becomes more important at 100 or 150 or 200 yards with the 20. So, what's the old saying? Crawl, walk, run. If you haven't done a lot of 22 shooting, or it's been a while since you've been on the range with a rifle and you want to polish your skills a little bit, 22 is a great way to do it. And start at 25 yards. And when you're making one hole at 25 yards, then you can go a little farther out. And as you get farther out, especially if you're on a range where you have good exposure to the wind, which is what you really want to have in order to learn those skills, then, you're going to actually see the impact of wind gusts on your point of impact. You're going to be able to see the expansion of your group size, and if you have the ability to do this, putting targets out at unknown distances that you have to try to, range find and do range estimates without using a laser, using your rifle's reticle. That's another great skill that you can practice with the 22.
It's interesting.
Because,
It's a good point.
when you get out to 300 yards with a 22, that bullet is dropping, several inches per foot that it
Yeah.
traveled, So, I mean, it's definitely coming in a lot more like a howitzer than a rifle.
Turns into a rainbow instead of a laser, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. And the farther out you go, the more challenging and difficult that becomes.
That's a thing that I caught on with the AK. I love the 5.56, and it's my go-to rifle. But I originally started off with the AK just because of the cost at the time, and I was very interested in our enemies, the Russians, the good old communists. So I learned a lot about it. But the 7.62x39, which they had already switched to 5.45x39, which shoots more like our AR-15 platforms.
Right.
The 7.62x39 is a rainbow shooter. Once you get out 300-400 yards, that thing's on a ballistic trajectory downwards, and
Oh,
people
yeah.
forget that. But that's what the gun was designed for, and it's another thing a lot of people forget about. And I think the 300 blackout shooters nowadays, the cost of that ammo is high, but you can still learn all that concepts in a 22 platform. And before we even got on the podcast, I looked up a few websites. One was Pew Pew Tactical, and of course that website sells a lot of stuff on their website. And they were talking about a couple bolt action rifles that they did a lot of this long range precision stuff on, CZ 457.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they had
That's a lovely
Ruger
bolt gun.
precision rimfire, and then a Bergara B14R, which I
Yep.
have no idea what that is. And then of course the Ruger 1022 Target Light came into play. He has a bunch of stuff on the website. They're talking about how much that is, $1,129, which to me is where you're getting into the competition 22 rifle
Yeah,
values of things.
that's the low end.
Yes, yeah.
That's the low end. You can easily
I had
spend
pellet
double
guns
or
that were
triple that.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I had pellet guns that were probably over $1,000 easy with no optics on it. They've got a bunch of good information on here, and I wouldn't. This is the reason why I want Historian on, because you can come and read this article and kind of get the gist of it, but it's going to cost you a lot of money because their websites. They were talking about Ely and Lapua ammo and Winchester Super X, and they were talking about what their accuracy was out of it: 0.30 inches, 0.50 inches, muzzle velocity, and they talk about the extreme spread versus a standard deviation FPSs
Oh, yeah.
on it too. And some were really good. The Ely 10X rounds were 8 FPS out of the rifle. The Lapua was 6 FPS for their standard deviations. So,
Oh, yeah.
but it's not cheap. It is not cheap. But you can still do this with cheaper ammo. It's not going to be as good. It's not going to be as accurate.
Well, 50 cents a round for, high-end Lapua or high-end Ely compared to, what is it these days for Federal Gold Medal Match 308? It's like
no
2
idea.
something around, 3 something around. I haven't bought any in forever.
I don't have a
But-
308. All my friends do, but I specifically stayed away from it. Just the cost back in the day was prohibitive.
Well, it
So-
hasn't gotten any cheaper.
It's not getting
Now-
any cheaper.
Now, I can load my own at today's prices for about a quarter of what the factory stuff costs.
Yeah.
And I have the tools and now have the experience and develop the skill to get ammo with less than 10 feet per second extreme spread and standard deviations at 4 and 5 feet per second.
I was watching
but-
a video of a guy loading, I guess, AK ammo, and he was using a drill press to seat bullets by hand.
It needs to be minute a man. That's what it
Yeah.
needs to be. But, I spend for each 100 round lot, probably somewhere between 12 and 16 hours for 100 rounds.
Mhm.
I have, a very good process that delivers extremely uniform results. But, when you spend basically an entire weekend loading a 100-round batch, that becomes a problem.
Your weekend.
Yeah, and I've got a whole bunch of other things that I need to do instead of loading,
Yeah.
outstandingly good ammunition. I mean, I can do it. Most of the ammo that I load, most of the rifle ammo I load these days, what I would call pretty good ammo. It's not going to shoot, it's not going to have the consistency of my outstandingly good ammo, but it's a whole lot quicker to run.
I
And
have a Dillon
right,
reloader, and it's good enough for what we did. And it is actually Liquid Rabbit has it up at his place. I don't know if he's still running it or not, but yeah.
yeah,
It's
I've got a Dillon. I've had a Dillon for, oh God, I'm trying to think. I've had a Dillon since it's been 40 years. I've had a Dillon for 40 years.
and you get very hand precision with those. You can, but
you
it takes a
you
lot longer.
can, yeah,
Takes a lot longer.
yeah, if you use, I mean, when I'm loading extremely good ammo, I use sleeve dies. I use the absolute best dies I can get, which are Redding dies, and the extremely high accuracy die sets. And I think when I got them, I paid $50, for with the bushing, all the bushings and everything else, probably close to 300 per die set for the calibers that I shoot long distance. But it's but ultimately I think it was a good value because I was able to produce really good ammo for a fraction of the price of federal gold medal match. But
Oh yeah.
and not all of the sticks that I shoot long distance, I can get factory ammo for them. Some of them are Wildcats, so
A whole nother.
that's a whole nother discussion. But going back to the
You and Scout would be good on that one. I know what it is, but it's way above my pay grade.
yeah, well, going back to the 22, right? That's the whole
Mm.
point. That was one of the major reasons why I got interested in setting up a precision 22.
Yeah.
And mine's not all that precise. Mine will shoot about, with a good lot of CCI, which is its preferred chow. It'll shoot about 3/4 MOA, out to 100 yards.
That's not bad.
It'll shoot one MOA. It'll shoot one MOA 200 yards. And once you get past that, out at 300 yards, it's a lot harder to determine unless you go out really early or happen to catch a no-wind day. It can be really hard to figure out what your group size is at 300 yards.
Right.
Because the wind has a very significant effect on point of impact at those
Yeah.
distances. But if your goal is to learn how deliver an accurate shot at extended ranges, then the 22, as I said at the beginning, will get you 9/10 of the way there. What you will need to do after that is to use the same optic on your 22 as you do with your long distance rifle and and get somebody to coach you on the really important things at that point, which are going to be making sure you get behind the rifle in exactly the same way every time. Because at those distances, consistency of hold and consistency of how the rifle recoils as it's going through its firing cycle, as the bullet is headed down the barrel, start to have a significant impact on your accuracy at range. So, once you have taught yourself how to be able to hit accurately with a 22 at 200 and 300 yards, and you're transitioning to center fire, that's the point where you probably want to drop some coin on getting a really good long distance coach to teach you how to shoot long distance. And there are some very, very good, places that you can go to pick those skills up. And I would not done that myself. I would strongly recommend that if there's any way for you to do it, once you are at the point where you believe you have the skills at wind reading and wind reading and distance estimation, to start shooting center fire at 700, 800, 900, 1,000 yards, then you really want to go and take a class on doing that.
Yeah,
Because
it's a different animal. It really
Right.
is.
But up until that point, the 22 you can learn a tremendous amount shooting the 22. And
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about one more thing too. And that is that you have a choice between getting a little more precision with a very accurate 22 bolt gun or having speed of follow-up with a self-loader, a semi-automatic like a Ruger 1022 or one of the
Yeah.
many clones. And I looked at that and I decided that I was going to stick with being able to deliver good follow-ups with minimal disturbance of the rifle.
Hmm.
And that militated towards the 1022. And one of the reasons that I usually did very well in long distance 22 competition, in windy conditions especially, when you're shooting in a gusty wind and the wind takes your shot a little bit, just enough to the left to miss the target, right?
Yep.
And you see that. With a bolt gun, you have to run the bolt and get back on and squeeze. And that takes, even if you're really good at bolt work, that might take a couple seconds.
Yeah.
But with a 1022, as soon as you see the other bullet land, you can deliver another shot in almost exactly the same condition. And that has made the difference for me in how many hits, I've gotten across the course of fire in 22 long distance competitions that I've shot in. And, if you spend a great deal of time learning how to run the bolt on your bolt gun and maybe even have it smithed a little bit so it's just as smooth as butter, then that may not have, that objection may not obtain. But I can tell you, one of the very first competitions I shot in, the wind was about 15 to 20 miles an hour with gusts, and it was changing direction by as much as 70 or 80 degrees.
Wow.
And the guys that were running bolt guns were better shots than I am, than I was at that point. I freely admit it. I think one of those guys was a President's 100 shooter, but
Wow.
the reality is that I had the second highest score on the day, and the number one guy was, I think, a good bolt gun shooter.
Hmm.
But he beat me by 1 point.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm shooting, factory Ruger 1022 with a little bit of trigger work done to it, but, not a high-end barrel, not a high-end stock, not high-end ammunition. And this guy's rifle, I think, was around $2,500, and he was shooting the Elite 10X.
That's gotta hurt your feelings a bit, like being that good and knowing you're that capable, and having a guy who obviously you are a shooter, but still like coming in with a 1022 and kind of getting chased. I am sure the other people were probably not too pleased either about that whole situation.
Well,
But that's
when you're shooting gusty winds, right? That's what happens because the condition, all right, bang, I missed to the left, crank the bolt. Okay. Well, now you've got a different condition. Whereas with me, it's bang, oops, I missed to the left, bang.
bang. Yep, and that's
Being able to make that rapid follow-up really makes a difference.
I think that's
And
important
and that's
too.
just in competition.
Yeah. If you float this out, if you are military side of things, this is why I think a lot of the bold actions started falling by the wayside in a lot of the sniper communities, just for the simple fact, and there's a reality. You can make a bolt action rifle sing repeatedly far more accurately than you're going to a semi-automatic. But we see with a lot of the modern military sniper rifles, they're all semi-automatic now because you missed a
Yep.
shot, you take the next shot. And I think it's a good point for you guys who are looking, because I brought out that article, and that's all bolt actions. I like the semi-automatic value of the 1022s, their clones and stuff like that, because you can pull the trigger again and again until
Yep.
you reload a magazine. And that's what you would be doing as a prepper if you are in a bad situation, or military in a bad situation. You're going to put rounds on target as fast and as accurately as possible. Not, oh, I missed my shot, let me click, click, click. It's not World War II anymore.
Well, and yes,
There is value for competition wise, there's value for bolt action. There's accuracy for bolt action, and that single shot, cold shot is important. And I think the bolt action probably excels at that far further.
the bolt has its place. I'm not going to argue that it doesn't. The bolt has its place, but in particular, with regard to long distance shooting, whether it's competition or whether it's a military situation, the ability to deliver rapid follow-ups is really important. And one of the things that Colonel Cooper talks about in his book, The Art of the Rifle, is the importance of being able to run that bolt almost automatically. What is not discussed in that, but is discussed in some of the other books I've read on sniping, is that when you run that bolt, you are making a motion immediately after having discharged your firearm. And unless you are running a can, which is becoming increasingly commonplace these days, but not so much, in many locations of the world today, if you're 150, 200, 300 yards away, that motion is, something somebody can see.
Yeah. We were talking about motion being very important just in concealing yourself back in the day.
Yes.
I was talking about my concealment in watery, aquatic, fun places, and the in dead, calm water, any movement will signify something is out there. You'll see the ripples of the wave and everything else like that. Our eyes are extremely attracted to motion, or we're not
Yep.
as attracted to no motion. That said, in water, if everything's moving and you're not, you stand out.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. No, that's certainly agrees with my experience. Having spent a little bit of time in the Everglades, anytime I saw the water moving, I definitely paid attention.
I have a good coworker friend of mine who spends a lot of time in the Everglades. He's got an airboat, so yeah, they're always paying attention to what's in the water. And now we have all those pythons that everybody released down in the Everglades too to deal with. So
I read an interesting
times.
article about that. I read an very interesting article about that. The Burmese python population apparently is taking a huge, huge drop because the native critters have finally learned how to avoid the adults who are hunting them and to get into the nests and destroy the young and get some food resources out of that before they grow up. So Burmese python populations apparently are plummeting throughout much of the Everglades.
That may be very true. I do know for a fact that the two-legged predators out there are looking for those pythons, and I believe it's for money as well. I think there's a bounty for them.
There's a bounty.
They have been going after them pretty hard. So, I said, my friend has a habit of going out there for that specific thing with some of his buddies.
Yeah, and more power to him.
Yeah.
The story my father told me many, many years ago was that there was a freighter in the Great Lakes, and I can't remember the name of the island now, but had a navigational mishap and ended up being wrecked. And its cargo was live pigs.
Oh.
That were headed for the stockyards.
Mm-hmm.
And, the crew obviously evacuated on their boat.
Yeah.
And the pigs, and this was in the late fall, and the pigs swam ashore on this island, which was known to be infested with rattlesnakes,
No.
heavily infested with rattlesnakes, to the point that human beings would not land on the island.
Yeah.
And the chap who was shipping the hogs, to the meatpacking plant, basically gave up any hope being able to,
Get the pigs off that island.
get the pigs off
recover
the
anything.
island.
Yeah.
So after the winter ice and the spring breakup, they sent a ship out there, and they anchored and went on board the island, and the hogs were all perfectly fine, and there wasn't a rattlesnake to be found.
And that would be accurate for hogs. So
So
I'm sure there's a couple dead hogs, but
yeah,
learn fast.
probably. Well, yeah, but the fat layer in a hog does a lot to slow down
That's
the
true.
effect of rattlesnake venom.
and bullets. It'll stop some bullets too.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to do when I was working down in Florida many moons ago was to go hunting for hogs in the glades.
Hmm.
I wasn't able to persuade anybody else to want to go with me, and I didn't want to go by myself.
Well, there's panthers out there right now too. There's been a uptick in black panther or not black panther,
Florida
the
panther.
Florida panthers.
Right.
So
Yeah.
as of late.
Yeah, well, 30 years ago, you could do a hog hunt, but I couldn't get
Yep.
any of my coworkers or any of my friends down there to go with me. We could never quite put it together.
I hear Joe Delio has some bears out on his property that you can possibly go hunt for. I don't know if you heard about that
know.
one.
No.
He shot one recently. It was coming in. So
Oh,
him and Scout chit-chatted about that, I think, on his last podcast. So
picked the whole rec room, didn't you bastard?
they've talked about the mountain lions out there in Camp Ponderosa. I know right now, as we're recording, they're having their mountain readiness. I think it's mountain readiness is out there right now. So I'm sure they're having a good time doing that.
Yeah, well, I have great respect for the pig.
Yeah, they're a scary animal.
Oh, you get big enough boar hog, you better know what
It's a
you're
problem.
doing.
There's another story. I can't remember if it's New Zealand or some part of Australia. A long time ago, some Canadians, I guess, brought over moose to an island, dropped them off, and dropped 20 moose off, and they just assumed they were dead. But recently, several people, like Canadians who are going to visit the area because it's apparently very beautiful, spotted moose, and the locals thought it was they just thought all the moose had died off and hadn't looked for them. But because they were getting so many tourists, and the Canadians were like, yeah, we saw a moose out there, but they didn't think anything of it because it was a standard sight for them up in Canada. So it's just interesting how animals get pushed around sometimes. As normal, we have gone off on tangents
Digressed.
again. It's part of the fun of this too.
Well, yeah, but the purpose of shooting is hitting.
Yep.
I don't remember who said that first, but the purpose of shooting is hitting. And how to hit, when you shoot, is one of those skill sets that, requires some effort to acquire, but can be absolutely essential in certain circumstances. And whether it's being faced with an angry bear or an angry hog, or an alligator that's, 6 feet away from you, sizing you up for lunch, or, lunch and dinner and feeding the youngins, whatever, there are times when there is no substitute for being able to shoot accurately and quickly with whatever you happen to be armed with. So there's that. And whether you're shooting, whether you're just starting out or whether you're, transitioning to longer distances with, shooting rifles, the .22 is a great way to do it.
Yeah.
It really is. But again, and I'm going to say something that I was taught many years ago by Master Sergeant Master Gunnery Sergeant would be in the Marine Corps. And he taught me that almost no matter what you're doing, mastery of any particular subject, skill set, is simply understanding and applying the fundamentals And that is absolutely true when it comes to shooting. And whether you are shooting a 22 or whether you are shooting a Barrett, being able to properly and consistently apply the fundamentals is the to accuracy and to hitting, right? The purpose
Yeah,
of shooting is hitting. And if you can reliably deliver the same approach to each shot, then you're going to hit every time you let the shot go. And that's the goal.
right. Yeah, I can't remember if it was the guy Eric from Barrel and Hatchet was talking at one of his classes, or I heard it from somewhere else. I think it's kind of a universal statement. Is like skilled people learn until they can do it right, and masters learn how to do it until they can't do it wrong anymore. And that's where the
Correct.
22 comes into play. You may not want the 22 to be your primary weapon. It may not be your survival rifle. It may just be something that you hunt with and you're very accustomed to. But it's the fundament and the building blocks and the wind. Because, well, I'll be straight up honest. I am terrible at wind gauging because I haven't had the opportunity to do a lot of long range shooting in the wind. When I was out in Utah, I realized that pretty quickly. I was shooting a pistol at 200 yards, 9 millimeter, 210 yards, I think was the target.
Yeah.
And it, I really caught the wind. Like
Oh,
pistol
yeah.
rounds catch wind real well, even at that short distance. But it's
Oh,
coming out
yeah.
of a short barrel too, and you catch that, and I go, "Oh wow, I'm not reading the wind. I'm not reading what I should be." And this is a fundamental skill. A lot of avid shooters in the modern era don't get a chance to really engage in because they have 100, 200 yard outdoor range sometimes. The South is full of 200-yard public ranges that people go out and shoot AKs and ARs, but they're not getting any windage skills because
Right. And
round
that
doesn't get pushed that
and
much.
again, just to reiterate something I said early on, you're absolutely right. 100-yard range is relatively easy to find. Even in a built-up area, you can find 100-yard ranges, 200-yard ranges, not so hard. 300 yards starts to be a stretch, and a 500 or 1,000-yard range,
Yeah,
those
they're a lot
those
more rare now than they've
they're
ever
they're
been.
getting harder and harder to find, at least in the East.
Yeah.
You can find a place out west on BLM land to shoot, you know, I would
Farmers
guess.
have it set up. You go out to Missouri. I was out in, oh, what's that terrible place? Get out of Dodge City, Kansas. Uh, There's a reason why they say get out of Dodge. There's nothing there, but there's farmers out there, and you could see their target set up, and just it is there's targets just going down the side of a crop field and
Oh yeah.
berms, and
Yep.
that's where it is. It's possible, and you go out. Like I said, I was shooting on a public range with, I can't remember, was this 1,200 yards or something like that on that range, and there was several bays that were that length, but the property was out there. You get in the east, you got to cut down trees, you have to manicure the grass, you have to do all the other stuff, and the government doesn't want to play that game. And unless you want to throw big dollars at that range, it's some good quality ranges, you're not getting on 1,000 yards very often. So you
Yeah,
don't learn
it's
that skill. You just don't.
yeah, and this is one way to get you 90% of the way there. Start with put the same glass on it that you have on your long distance stick. And we didn't really talk about that much, but
Mhm.
one of the things that I like is if you decide not to use exactly the same scope, that can work. But what you don't want to do is mix MOA and Mills.
Yeah, I was talking to Scott about that too, and
Right.
I think you're a Mills fan, and he said I go with the MOA because a lot more people are used to MOA,
Right.
which
And
it
and
makes sense.
and when I started shooting my first scopes, I mean, I bought good ones. I got Leupolds.
Yeah,
They were all MOA. And I thought about it when I started to get really serious about long distance shooting, and I decided that I was going to go with Mills for a variety of reasons. But, it made sense to me to go with Mills. So I have transitioned. I mean, I still have MOA scopes on my hunting rifles that I, typically don't shoot past 250 or 300 yards.
Yeah.
But for longer distance stuff, I've transitioned completely to mills. And, I don't make windage and elevation adjustments on my hunting rifles.
You probably don't need to. Not
Right.
200-300 yards.
Right. And that's around here in my area, that's about as far as I'm going to go.
Yeah. And the trees
Um,
and stuff like that, you don't
Right.
have the visibility to get past there.
Right. So, and I even have a couple of hunting rifles that just have peep sights on them. I don't have a scope on them at all. And as Johnny Paratrooper will tell you, you can go an awful long distance with peep sights all by themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
But, to go back to it, make sure that you get a good scope that has a similar reticle to the one that you're going to put on your long distance rifle. And whether it's MilDOT or MOA doesn't matter nearly as much as making sure that you have the same system on both your long distance rifle and your 22.
Gotcha. And that makes a lot of sense. You're also doing math differently and everything else. And
Yep.
this is a process that when you get into it, you're going to be building dope cards and some other stuff. And that may be something we touch on a little bit later. I think there's enough good YouTube videos on those subjects. There's people that have printout dope cards for you to you don't even have to purchase from them. They do sell them, but you can just print them out on a computer and set them up and put them on your rifle. I know some of the guys will put their their dope in their lens caps. Sometimes their covers.
Yeah,
as well.
what I do is I tape it to the cheek side of my stock, and then I put more tape on top of it.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. I've seen that.
And-
Even in the military, people have done that.
And that way, if I'm not sure, then, all I got to do is look, and then I can, dial the turret. The other thing you probably want to do is put witness marks on it so that you know where your zero is and how many turns around your zero.
Yeah.
Because it can be easy to forget that the longest distance I have ever hit anything with a 22 was 515 yards. And the drop was 30 mils
Oof.
from, 38 mils. And I didn't have enough adjustment in my scope to go that far out. I was coming down the reticle to the very bottom of the reticle. And I did manage to hit the 515 yard target once, and I missed it. And I missed it the other 4 shots.
That's kind of my pistol experience out there with a red dot at 210 yards. You
can
shoot. You can do it. You can do it.
You can do a lot with a red dot, but I got to tell you,
It's hard to get that elevation quite accurately sometimes.
yeah, well, you can get iron sights with elevation marks on the front sight.
If I have
So
to
that-
shoot somebody at 210 yards with my pistol, I know you can. I know the competition guys do it, but I'm not even going down that road.
Well, when I used to shoot combat pistol. Every month we'd also have a fun match we called Cowboy Action, and we would, guys would shoot single action revolvers.
Yep.
And a lot of the guys would shoot, 38 specials
Yeah.
out of 357 Magnum revolvers.
Yeah.
And they would load the thing as light as they possibly could load it and still have the bullet come out the front end of the barrel.
Yep.
And for the close range stuff, that worked pretty well for them.
Mhm.
But I shot a Ruger Blackhawk 44 Magnum with a 7.5-inch barrel.
Yep.
And I didn't shoot full house 44 Magnum,
Right.
but I shot something that was probably halfway between a full house 44 and a 44 special,
Yeah.
which you can also shoot from a 44 Magnum, as probably most of your listeners know. But anyway,
You're dating
And-
yourself, sir.
well,
A lot of people don't even shoot revolvers anymore.
so now we're really digressing, but I'm going to drive down this rabbit hole a little bit. So the semi-auto is great at delivering sustained fire with reloads.
Yeah.
And it's great for that. And I own more than one. But there are other situations in which it's not so good. And I will give you an example. One of the issues that I have to deal with on my place is venomous snakes.
Yes.
I have timber rattlers, which increasingly don't rattle, by the way.
I did not know that.
Well, evolution is evolution, right? And when you
Yeah.
kill all the rattlesnakes that rattle,
Yeah, the
There's a
what's left is the
strong-
ones that don't.
yeah, there is a strong evolutionary pressure to have rattlesnakes not rattle. But anyway, I've got timber rattlers on my place, and I know I have at least one breeding pair because I've seen their babies come crawling up the slope towards me.
Ooh.
And yeah, and there's plenty of vermin to feed snakes around my place. But the other one is copperheads. And most of the time the rattlesnakes run away. And most of the time, if it's more than 100 yards from my house, I leave them alone because as much as I dislike getting snake bit, I dislike having, mice in my house.
There's a reason why a lot of people have barn cats out in the Missouri and Kansas area.
Oh, yeah.
For that reason. Barn
But
cats,
anyway-
home cats.
Yeah, but anyway, if I'm walking around, the last copperhead I shot with 9mm. So that was what I had.
Yeah.
But most of the time when I am, working on my property, I'd like to have a revolver because I can load it with, 44 Magnum shot capsule for the first
Yeah.
couple of shots. And then I can load it with a couple of 44 special wad cutters for larger varmints. And then the last two shots are 44 Magnum Full House for the occasional black bear that I hope I don't encounter.
Yeah.
And and I keep an ammo wallet for all three of those ammunition types. And there is a lot to be said for being able to deliver repeat shots without having to go through the trouble of manually loading a shot shell into a semi-automatic.
Oh, it's very true. I had that experience. We had copperheads, and I was hiking at night, which is always fun. And then on top of that, it was of course a monsoon, and copperheads like to
snakes-
stay out of the water,
Yeah.
onto the
so-
trail.
Yeah, so the snakes were getting out of their holes or whatever.
So they
Yeah.
were all out hanging out, and yes, you can the little rat shots, or whatever you want to call them, the
Snake shot, rat shot.
snake shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 9mm really, you got to be good with that stuff. Sometimes it doesn't always get it, but you'll see like the 357 Magnums and the 45 or the 45s caliber ones are a little bit better. They've got a better capability of killing a snake with one shot.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I've shot snakes with 22 solids. I've shot snakes with 9mm and 38, but, solids. But, it's a lot easier. It's a lot
it's not always a
easier-
quick kill.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to shoot them with a shot shell than it is to try to hit them with a single projectile.
Yep.
But, and one of the other things that I learned is that you have to be careful after you've beheaded the venomous snake. Don't get your fingers near its mouth.
I hope that wasn't a personal experience.
No.
Okay,
But
good. I was
I
told
was-
that as a young child, like once you cut the head off, they're still dangerous for a
Oh,
good
yeah.
while. So
And in fact, there are a number of recorded cases of people being killed by the snake that they had previously beheaded.
yeah.
And
So
anyway, we really are digressing. But to all the folks that are listening here, you don't need to get the world's greatest 22.
Nope.
A box
you don't have to
stock.
spend $1,100 one at all.
Oh yeah, I mean you can spend as much money on a 22 as you want. you can spend enough money to buy a decent used car on one of those. And, if that's what you want to do, more power to you. Go for it. But don't think that because you don't have the absolute best that you can't learn an enormous amount about shooting in the wind and shooting at distance by shooting a box stock Ruger 1022
Yep.
or a clone.
Yeah. Or whichever, whatever you got a hold of.
Yeah,
So
you don't need to spend a fortune to do it.
That's the reason why I wanted you to talk about this, is because the reality is it's good training, and it is a capable, easy access thing for a lot of people, even on a budget. You don't have to spend $1 million. You don't have to spend $1,200 on a new AR-15 with optics and everything else. You might spend a little more, or go get a used 22. They're out there. A lot of people have used 22s.
Yeah,
for sale.
And that's a great point too. You wear out a high-powered rifle if you shoot it. I'm getting ready to replace the barrel on my primary long-distance stick because I've got about 3,000 rounds through it, and the throat erosion is significant enough at this point. I can't shoot the bullets far enough out and still have them run through the magazine. So it's looking like it's time for a new barrel. And that rifle is arguably the most accurate rifle I've ever shot. It would have that 3-inch groups at 500 yards consistently.
Wow.
So, and now it's like twice that.
You got that much barrel erosion, yeah. I'm not shocked.
About 175 thousandths of an inch.
It's a lot of erosion out of the metal, which kind of shocked me. I was talking to Zero and Sons. They make suppressors, and he said the most brutal thing on the suppressor was actually the unburnt gunpowder going through the can.
Oh yeah.
Itself.
Oh yeah.
People think it's the bullet and everything else, but it really isn't.
Well, yeah, the powder, the erosion of the burning powder can be a significant factor. But yeah, I mean, my stick, my typical load is 66 grains IMR H4831 shortcut. It's a Magnum, and it burns a lot of powder.
Yep.
And the barrel, it's a heavy barrel, but it still gets pretty warm pretty quick.
We see this with the Creedmoors burning out and everything else like that. I think the 6.5 Creedmoor, what's the barrel expectancy on that? 5,000 rounds? Something like that?
No, I don't think it's that much.
It might even be less than that.
I think it's in the 2,500 to 3,000 range.
That sounds better. I kind of probably over-exaggerated, but 5,000 rounds for me back in the day was nothing. We'd shoot 2,000 rounds in a weekend. Not so much anymore with the ammo prices, but hey.
Yeah, well, yeah, and then 308, on the other hand,
yeah,
you can probably get somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 rounds out of a 308 barrel, depending on how quickly you shoot it. If you're running, a self-loader like an AR-10 or a M1A,
yep,
or any of the battle rifles, you can put yourself in the market for a new barrel in 5,000 or 6,000 rounds if you work at it.
Yep. And it's not that far when they used to have 308 surplus all over the place, it was a lot easier to do, but it's still available.
Yeah, I haven't seen any 308 surplus in a while.
I haven't since a long time ago when I was shooting extensively. Anyways, I think that's a pretty good wrap-up point, though. I think we've touched all the bases in animals and hunting and a few other things. We'll probably get down this again. I did take my rifle out to a 100-yard range and forgot the magazines for it. So if you buy a 1022, make sure you bring your magazines in your bag. I was bolt loading this gun, and it's a pain. One shot at a time.
You are not the only person to have done that, let me tell you.
I was at a public range. It was one shot every 5 seconds. And to be fair, I was so annoyed with that part of the whole procedure. I was like, you know what? I just don't care. So I sighted the rifle and I was like, I'm done for the day. So anyways, that's how it goes.
If your mission was to get the rifle sighted in and you were able to do that, then it was a good day.
Yeah, I wanted to reach out a little further, but I was like, no, let's just get this side in, get it over with. I'm done. And they had the whole process where you have to like wait for the guys, put barrel flags in, walk forward, and it was like, all right, good enough for now. I'll take this back up to North Carolina somewhere and shoot it, or do some fun somewhere else. Anyways, let's cut this. Thank you, historian, for coming on again. I like having
Oh,
a
it's
different
my
topic with
pleasure.
you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we'll have
And
you back on
well,
for something again.
yeah, and for those of you who are interested, we do have another NVRS class coming up second full weekend in November.
Okay, second weekend in November or September.
I'm sorry, second weekend in September. Forgive me.
Oh, that's fine. I
And
want to make sure because the November one I
no,
could have gone to.
no, second weekend in September. There may be other classes in November. We'll see.
Okay, sounds good. Everybody, you guys keep your shovel sharps and don't be a loot drop. Have a good night.
Take care.